Terry, really? Right at the start? You have to break me right at the start?
Walk like an Egyptian.
Yeah, this is why we can't have nice things.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 477 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon. Joining me, Paul E. Cooley. How you doing, man? That does not sound at all positive. Have you seen a doctor about that?
Yes, but they couldn't understand the grunts and groans either. So, yeah, I just screwed.
And with that, we're going to bring the episode to a close. What have you been up to, man?
Great. Let's see. Gears Inferno ebook coming out December 22nd. The trade paperback is put together. I'm getting proof copies mailed to me as we speak. And once I get those, then I can go ahead and do orders. So I can sell it from my website if you want the autograph versions, or you can order it from Amazon. And I'm struggling like hell right now to finish Destruction. The struggle is real, folks. The struggle is very real.
The struggle is not real. It's just extended into the future a little bit. Maybe a lot of it.
Maybe a lot of it. When I hit 80,000, I was like, oh, good. I only have 10,000 more to go. I'm at 94.5 right now, and I'll probably write another 2,500 words tonight and still not be closer to the end of this goddamn book.
It's when you look over your shoulder and go, wasn't that where we were going on the left back there?
I think I took a wrong turn at Albuquerque again. You know, I feel like Bugs Bunny. So I mean, I'm not bored. I'm not having fun. It's just that there's all these loose ends and things that I have to tie up. And another one that can quickly open and close. So I've got these things that I'm setting up, and it is just become a nightmare. And then on top of it, I figured out how to continue the series. So
12 more books.
So it's going to be kind of fun, and I've already got 2 standalone novels that are related to the stuff that's going on at Mira. I've got those outlined, and then of course Signal Decay is outlined and ready to rock. I just need to get back to that book and finish it. So I figured out how all these things dovetail together, and now I'm really angry because I have so much more work to do.
But it's not work if you're having fun.
This is true, but it's just a matter of I thought that I could focus on something else for a little while, and this is just gonna push me to do things. The good news is that the next 2 books that I write that don't have S&R Black in them, I will be working with people I've never worked with before, dealing with new characters, dealing with new situations, and able to tell stories that are completely different and yet are somewhat related. One of them is very much related. But the names of those books are SFMC Trident and SFMC White, which is about S&R White, which is the sister ship of Black, which is out in space on a mission when the Derelict saga takes place. So but those are all
fine.
Those are all outlined and ready to rock and roll. I just need to write them. I think I'll probably write Signal Decay first, but we'll see. And I'm going to talk to Sever Press and see what they want to do. So, but I'm not going to do that until after I finish the books. Period. In the story. As far as I'm concerned, or they're concerned, they don't exist till they're ready. So that's that plan going forward. That's the new plan. So I've got a lot of work to do to finish Destruction by the end of the year. I wanted to have it done by my birthday. I don't see how that's freaking possible unless I want to die of exhaustion between now and then. And it's already Tuesday, and my birthday's Friday, so I don't think that's going to happen. Unless I get on a jag and, write 7,000 or 8,000 words a day for the next 3 days. I just don't see that happening.
Not gonna happen.
Not with having to edit this show and take care of all the podcast responsibilities and the day job. And yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. So that's what's up in my world. What about you, sir?
Oh, more home repair madness, having trees taken down in the front yard and the side yard. It's just eating up my attention span. I've got some writing done this week, but hardly anything of what I wanted to get accomplished. And it just looks like this is going to be an on and off again disruption to my life for like 2 months, 3 months from now. But maybe once this particular project is done, I could get my act together. I'm still hoping to get the Terra book finished by the end of the year. Get it on the beta readers so that I can have it published in late January.
Okay. So you were talking about the end of this year.
That ain't happening. It will be done by the end of this month. I'm over 60,000 words. I can make it happen by the end of this year, or the end of this month, the end of this year. Same thing.
Yes. You were confused.
I was
confused. It happens to people of your age.
What? Yeah. It'll be done. And then I can get it off to the beta readers and start the next project while waiting for the next home repair project to just totally disrupt my schedule again. But I've got to get my act in gear because I made commitments to write more next year. So I've got to make it happen.
Yeah, you and me both. This was a bad year for me writing wise. I only got 3 books done, and really hating on myself about that, especially since 2 of them were already somewhat underway. So I kind of ticked off. I need to do a lot better next year, and finishing Destruction will be a huge weight off me. So I think I will no longer feel like I'm Atlas with the world on my shoulders. I should be able to crank on some of these other books pretty fast, I hope.
We talked about doing something like the 365 days of writing, and I keep getting hung up on that because I know I'll be gone to a convention for a week, and there'll be other chaos here. I'm halfway thinking about just aiming for 300 days of writing next year to try to take some of this bullshit that life is throwing me into account.
Well, just remember what David Wood said, 8 minutes a day. Just find those 8 minutes and write. That doesn't even have to be on one of your stories. Just write for 8 minutes. You can find 8 minutes.
I'm going to try to at least have 300 days of significant writing done next year.
Okay, another 65 of 8 minutes.
What I could do on my phone while I'm at a convention.
I think at last Balticon, I got like 5,000 or 6,000 words written.
It's a pretty serious amount of writing. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a laptop with me. I'm not going to take that kind of, that's the problem. I'm not going to take any kind of sizable electronics with me.
That's why you need to get yourself a tablet, Mr. Moneybags.
Have a tablet.
Well, what's the problem then?
I can't comfortably write on it. Don't particularly like it for that. It's just me.
All right, fine.
But that's okay. I'm going to experiment with, writing by audio and recording it and seeing whether or not Dragon can actually pull it in which case that may make things a little easier.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a good solution for that. I imagine that would be a very good solution for that.
We'll see. There will be experimentation. The convention isn't until May, so I've got time.
And which convention is this again?
This is the SIFWA Nebula Convention.
NebulaCon, okay. NebCon.
Or whatever they call it. I'm not sure. It may be a conference. Who knows?
It probably is a conference because that's much more hoity-toity.
Yes, the Hoyt factor.
The Hoyt factor as opposed to the toity factor?
That's right. You've got to have, on one hand, you've got the Hoyt factor and the toity on the other side. Other than that, things are good.
Cool. So hopefully we'll get our asses in gear and have significant progress by the end of the year.
1 million words next year.
Fuck that.
Okay, I'm not going to make that kind of commitment.
That's not happening.
That's crazy talk. It still might happen, but it's still crazy talk.
It's still crazy talk. Very much crazy talk.
All right, man.
So I want it known before we get into this episode that you got me in a lot of trouble.
I am not responsible.
You led me into a brick wall. The patrons have already chastised me for some of the statements I made in this episode.
That's because you're a rash human being and you just can't stop yourself.
So please send all hate mail after this episode to terry@terrymixon.com, not paul@shadowpublications.com, or show at deborahbotsociety.com.
Mm.
Don't do any
they're
of that.
going to keep sending you the hate mail.
Because they know you don't actually read anything.
Oh, I read everything that somebody says to me, but they know they'll get a much more positive, well, positive in some aspects, reaction from you.
All right.
More entertaining response from you, I'm sure.
Uh-huh. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now that we've gotten that out of the way.
Yes.
All your hate mail to paul@paulecooley.com.
I don't have an email at paulecooley.com.
You should.
I have paul@shadowpublications.com.
I'm surprised you don't have your own domain.
I do.
Paul E. Cooley? You own that?
Yeah. I own paulecooley.com. Yeah.
I'm surprised you don't use it.
Right now it just redirects because I need to get an author site together and I don't know what I want on there. I don't know how to build it. I've looked at what other people have done and I'm just kind of like, I don't like that either. So it's like, I know what should happen is that shadowpublications.com should be the publishing company face and the podcast face, and then paulecooley.com should be the author face.
Yeah.
The author stuff. The problem is I just don't know what I want on there. So I haven't done anything, but I guess after Destruction comes out, I'll have a better idea of the kind of things that I need to put on there as far as Soul and Beyond lore, list of characters, list of places, things like that. Stuff I could put in Archivos, which I'm going to have to start using pretty goddamn religiously after this.
Or you'll forget everything.
Or I'll forget everything. And then, people who read my work more carefully are going to be like, you have a continuity error on page 110, Kinder location 14,201 through 14,295, wherein you did this.
This person was naked in the earlier scene, and now they have different nakedness on.
And on this page, the dilithium crystals did nerd speak. Yeah.
And you got the science wrong.
And you got the science wrong. Which was the point? Which was the point, you dick?
Which that's a good place for us to segue into talking about science fiction versus science fantasy, which is what you write.
I write science fantasy?
Sounds like, either that or you were high. I'm not sure.
Let's see, shall we?
Indeed. So, Paul, tell me, what's the difference between science fiction and science fantasy? Do you even know what those things are?
I have my own opinion.
Well, let's hear it.
I think that science fiction is, well, shit.
Well, damn it.
Well, damn it. I'm trying to think of a single hard science fiction story I have read that doesn't have some element of the fantastical to it. And I'm having a real difficult time coming up with it. And I guess that's because you go back and look at the famous science fiction stories, H.G. Wells, having been the in some ways the progenitor of a lot of this. What wasn't fantastical in his books?
Well, what makes a story fantasy as opposed to science? Are we talking something that is unexplainable by science?
Not necessarily. Fantasy, like magic, for instance, magic has no tenable relationship to science at all. Okay, it just doesn't. Unless you're going with the fact that if you make something technologically advanced enough, then it appears to be magic. So we have all these laws that we base our lives around. We know that the sun is going to come up. It's going to, we're going to travel around it. There's going to be a dawn. There's going to be a dusk, etc. We know that there's space out there that's got vacuum. We can't survive out there. Nothing on Earth that we know of could survive out there. Ha ha. But that also appears to be being disproved. So there's all these laws that we have built our lives around. And in fantasy, you're basically breaking those laws at will. And you're transforming the world as we know it into something else completely.
I don't know that I would say that it's breaking the laws at will. Let's use Star Wars as an example.
Oh, God, please don't.
We're going to do that because it's got an easily reachable thing that makes it science fantasy.
We've had this discussion. It's not science fiction. It's fantasy.
It is fantasy. But the thing that makes it science fantasy is really the whole Jedi thing. The being able to use the mind to manipulate the world around you. Something that is not explainable by science.
It's mystical.
It's mystical.
Mysticism.
It's like Zen Buddhists in space. Are there other kind of Buddhists? I always hear Zen Buddhists. Does that mean there are other kind of Buddhists?
I honestly couldn't answer that question. That is one of those religions that I really have not studied at all. So I am not the person to answer that question.
In any case, I think that you could make the case that Star Wars is definitely space opera, but it's also science fantasy because of the whole mystical aspect of it.
Well, what makes it science fiction to begin with? What even brings it close to being science fiction? Is it just the fact that these folks are out in space?
Sure. That's a big part of it. It's projecting from the world in which we live in to some far future date. And the fact that they are utilizing all these different aspects of futuristic science definitely makes it science fiction.
Okay. All right. What about 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Science fiction. Because we are once more projecting into the future.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
To a certain degree.
Just because it's got a date on it doesn't mean that it's not projecting into the future.
I'm not talking.
Let's talk about Space 1999, shall we?
Oh God, let's not. I loved that show when I was a kid. I was so pissed when they stopped doing the reruns, but it was. If I go back and watch it now, it's probably pretty bad. It's probably
I have
really
them on
bad.
DVD.
I'm not surprised. No, the reason why I brought up was 2001: A Space Odyssey. Besides the fact that we're on a panel on Friday about this on it's Arthur C. Clarke's centennial, and it's being held in Sri Lanka. So we're gonna be on like 10:30 at night to talk about this shit. But the reason why I bring up 2001, everything's cool and groovy until
the monolith.
And that's when shit goes crazy. And that's when we enter into this mystical world of things.
Well, heck, look at Star Trek.
Because once he enters once Dave Bowman enters the monolith, then shit gets weird. It just completely goes off the rails. In fact, it just kind of becomes this massive peyote trip, especially in the movie.
I think we may want to just ignore the last few minutes of that show. Yeah, but talking Star Trek: The Motionless Picture.
Ooh.
V'ger returns and does all kinds of weird things with rebuilding people and doing other things. It kind of edges into the mystical there as well. And then they wisely say, let's pretend this never happened in the future movies and move along.
Yeah, I never realized that. They don't reference it ever.
Ever.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because where else could they take it? And that's part of the problem with this, right? Is you get to a certain point of doing things, and it's like, okay, fine. Let's look at 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Okay.
You've got a sub that bypasses all the laws of thermodynamics and pressure.
The Nautilus. Are you still there?
massively huge creatures and everything else that go along with it. So it's where does it lie in that realm? Is it science because it's just projecting forward, or is it fantastical?
I think that that is science fiction because looking at the date that it was written, he was pulling out elements of what could exist. Here be dragons, sort of thing. And so the Nautilus had these great adventures in a world that was so far away from what anyone would expect. But I still think that that is more science fiction than science fantasy.
I think the reason why science fiction became so important in culture in the first place was because it's dreaming about our own world. It's dreaming about what is possible. It is dreaming about what if we're wrong about certain things, or what if we make certain technological breakthroughs. I remember when I was a kid, I was saying, made some comment about the speed of light, and everybody was like, until they find a way to break it. And I was like, no, it's concrete. You can't break it. Here I am, 46, going on 47, and I'm thinking, yes, we can break it. I don't know that we'll ever do it, but I'm sure it can be broken.
Spooky action at a distance proves that it's possible.
And just like if you do any study on quantum physics, our everyday laws of physics suddenly don't apply. They completely fall apart. Which, unless you're an obstinate person who has to believe that there are concrete rules governing everything, is actually pretty goddamn exciting, because it means that there's stuff that we don't know about that composes our universe. And that also means that there may be things that we can explore that are in our universe. We just do not know how to see them.
John Ringo, he writes all kinds of different series, some of which he never comes back to, some of which he may one day come back to. And one of them, he explores taking Higgs bosons and making them macro in size, so large, in fact, that people can pass through them into other universes. Yeah, I think there may have been some weed involved in this particular story. But it's totally true. You can do some crazy stuff. I think that would be, I don't know. I'm willing to say that one's science fantasy right there, but it's right on that borderline, I think.
That, again, Peter Klein's The Fold, 19, things like that. We have this mixture of science-based fiction that then completely goes off the rails, which is perfectly fine. I think the problem with trying to put the demarcation between science and fantasy goes back to the tropes in a lot of ways. Science fiction is almost always, when I hear science fiction, no matter what I try, no matter whether or not I know that this is not correct, I always see a starship. Always, 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 always. Will always do so. Because that is how I've been that is how I have been socialized, is all my early forays into science fiction involved outer space. So I don't think in terms of shows like Infinity or books that are science fiction that take place right here on planet Earth, in a future Earth, which doesn't have to be dystopian. It just usually is. But all my favorite books that are quote unquote science fiction take place off world, or a mix of off world, on world. Fantasy, that is the Tolkien trap, the Tolkien trope trap, and always will be for me, because that is how I always think about it, is D&D. That was how I socialized to think about it.
Well, let's make it difficult.
Oh, crap.
Glenn Stewart, Starship's Mage. Spaceships and mysticism.
Science fantasy, definitely. Definitely, definitely, definitely.
What about Nobilis Reed's Spaceships Powered by Sex?
Science fantasy again.
Wishful thinking? I think
Science
that's wishful.
erotica.
Science erotica?
Oh God, what was that book called? Scouts?
Mm-hmm.
Was it called Scouts? If you don't know what
Scouts.
if you don't know what we're talking about, go Google it. Go to Amazon, take a look at it. The The line of demarcation between science fiction, science fantasy, and fantasy is this really jumbled up, messy place.
It
Um,
it really depends on the reader, honestly. In a lot of
I
cases,
think it does depend on the reader, and this is what I was trying to get at. My socialization, fantasy, D&D, science fiction, shit flying in outer space. I mean, it's as simple
that
as that.
obeys the general laws of physics as we understand them today.
Now, hard science fiction, what we call quote unquote hard science fiction, does try and live within the constraints as we know them, as much as possible. I, of course, love destroying that line and then going, okay, well, let's describe this thing that doesn't match what we believe is possible, and then try and come up with explanations for it. I'm never
Mhm.
going to tell you what the concrete what it actually is, because that would ruin the fun.
Oh, come on, you can do it. Let's look at Empire of Bones. It's basically using normal Newtonian physics
Yeah.
in everything it does, but they can go from solar system to solar system using Einstein-Rosen bridges, basically warps in space that goes into that quirky quantum thing again, where you're talking wormholes.
Yes. And being able
They
to
do
create a
exist.
wormhole at will.
Being able to or one already exists. It's kind of where I got the idea from. That is from Star Trek. In Deep Space Nine, they had the wormhole right there next to the space station that could actuate at will and travel across the universe.
Right.
And I said, I can do that. I can use that. Steel.
Steel. Steel's always good. Um
And then I just made
the
up shit.
Yeah, then you just make up shit. That's the wonderful thing about space opera. Some shit happened over here. Uh and that's
Use
I'm
the
not,
force, Luke.
and once again, space opera, I am not down talking fantasy. I'm not doing you're doing it that way, and then with the black and derelict, what I'm doing is I'm including hard science and having hard science crash into the inexplicable. And that's where the fun begins, because I want to talk about what humanity evolves into. I want to talk about how we deal with suddenly finding out that the rules or laws that we have based our entire reality around are elastic, are more elastic than we think they are. And in some cases, we don't even understand them, even though we think we do. Anybody who's done the research into or read the papers on whether or not we're living in a simulation, for instance,
Matrix.
yeah, it's Matrix style deal. And they're basically saying, yeah, that's entirely possible. And it's kind
I
of
think they
like,
disproved it. There was a paper I saw that disproved it.
I until we see, well, okay, I haven't seen that one. I'll have to go looking for it, the rebuttal. But what I find very interesting about it is the folks who are trying to use the mathematics coupled with philosophy to figure out whether or not some of these things are actually possible.
We are living in a hologram.
We are
That's what
living
they
in a
say.
hologram. Yeah, that's part of it. So and again, is it science fiction or science fantasy? I think it's somewhere in my brain goes, if there was a PhD student who wrote their dissertation on it, it's probably science fiction.
I don't know, man. Some of these PhD candidates, they write some weird papers.
Yes, they do. And thankfully I can sometimes find them because some of them are really interesting. Um so combining stuff like in the black, I go in the first book, I go into all the realities of how we find oil, how we drill for oil, the kind of life that goes on there. So that's all hard science with how the chemistry works and all that other garbage. And then I throw in the crazy, which is there's this creature that should not exist, just plain should not be able to do what it does and have it break all the rules. And that's fun. Is that science fiction or science fantasy?
Science fiction.
Science fiction. Interesting. What about derelict?
Science fiction.
Okay. We'll see how long that opinion holds.
Science
So
fantasy, for me, you basically have to get into mysticism. Strange creatures, that doesn't do it. That doesn't do the science fiction for me. You've got to have the Jedi mind tricks. You've got to have things like that that are fairly specific.
So what you're really talking about when we talk about mysticism is we are talking about magic. We are talking about telepathy. We are talking about
Psionics,
psionics,
magic, any of that kind of stuff.
and yet, there have been several, like Babylon 5 had the entire Psi crew, right? They had an entire group that was of psionic soldiers or people, whatever. And that show was considered, science fiction.
I suppose psionics could be science fiction because, well, it just could be. This is really like pornography. I'll know it when I see it.
I was actually going to make that comment, but had decided not to. But yeah, okay, because we already said that in the pre-show.
Science fantasy is a very subjective.
We have all
thing.
This stuff that we do. What now?
I'm sorry, you froze on me there for a moment. So what I was saying is science fantasy is a very subjective sort of thing. And it's all very much personal taste. What I see as science fantasy, somebody else may see as just science fiction. Mm-hmm. And it's all flavors of the same sort of thing. You have to really go far out there to make something that everyone agrees is science fantasy.
I think you're right on that. Like Starship Mage kind of stuff. I think that fits in that realm. Like I said earlier, I think it just depends on how you were socialized. I think I grew up on Star Trek reruns, the original series. I grew up on that. I grew up on Space 1999. I grew up on all those the original Battlestar Galactica. That is what I think of when I hear the term science fiction, because that's how I was socialized. And when I hear fantasy, I think Terry Brooks and I think Dungeons and Dragons. That's exactly what comes out. It doesn't matter.
Xanth, baby.
Xanth, yes. And that's all the fantasy stuff, right? That's all of it. But here's the funny thing. One of my favorite D&D modules, if you're familiar with the original role-playing games that Gygax came out with way back when, you had Dungeons and Dragons and you had Gamma World.
Mm-hmm.
There was a D&D module, I can't remember what it was called, but was a Gamma World D&D crossover, where basically it takes place in the D&D world, but the characters come across a spaceship.
Yeah, I had that one.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called. Somebody out there help us. There's something of horrors. I can't remember what it was called.
I don't know that it was of horrors, but I can find it again fairly quickly. But yeah, I love that one because it was introducing science to fantasy.
Yeah, and the characters, of course, you really had to RPG it because the characters would not know any of this shit. What a button does. The hell's a button? Things like that. It was very interesting to watch. I mean, just imagine if you took somebody from the 15th century and give them a ray gun. Nothing good is going to happen.
It was Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Yeah.
I suspect I still have that lurking in a box somewhere.
That's really sad. Anyway, the that kind of crossover is really is that kind of mashup is another really good example, and this is where the lines have all blurred, right? The mashup stuff has become very popular because you are throwing in tropes from everything. It's just like, where's the kitchen sink? Yeah, throw that in there too. The mashups have become popular, I think, because they blur the lines so much, and I can appeal to science fiction folks at the same time I'm appealing to fantasy folks at the same time I'm appealing to people like mysteries and thrillers. Basically, if you take all that and you throw it in there and you do it right, there's the trick, do it right, then, you're going to get a wider, diverse audience, more diverse audience on that are going to like the book or at least give it a shot. And I think that's one of the cool things that's been going on in the last decade. I mean, obviously mashups have existed a lot longer before that, but I think basically the 2000 to 2010 were like the heyday of the mashup. And maybe that's not even fair, because I think this decade has been pretty rife with them too.
I think that if you really dig down, you're going to find that there are always mashups. It's just the subject matter is going to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're talking about doing a mashup. Back when I was running role-playing games, I took the D&D world that I was using, and decided I liked the whole Barrier Peaks concept and introduced a crashed spaceship and Klingons. The spaceship was long gone, but the Klingon race was mixed in with all the regular D&D races.
Oh,
which
no.
that made for some interesting times.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Oof. Yeah.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
Yes, I'll bet it was. I'll bet it was.
And I'm lucky Paramount didn't come and sue my ass into oblivion.
Oh, it's before they knew how to use the web to search for it.
It's before I was smart enough to put anything on the web.
There you go. There you go. I think that there are these lines to cross. And I guess the reason why this came up when we were talking about in the pre-show is somebody asked on Facebook, what makes a good science fiction story? And
compelling characters, interesting setting.
Yeah, which has absolutely nothing to do with science fiction. This is just general rules for a story, period.
It's totally true.
I mean, the sci-fi trappings, there still has to be a story when you rip all that stuff away. There still has to be a story.
Let's go ahead and dig to the real meat of the matter. Doctor Who.
Oh, no.
I'm not a Whovian, so I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. What do you think? And don't worry, all of our listeners are watching you right now and they are judging you.
I know they are, bastards. I think Doctor Who is straight up fantasy. But there are a lot of elements of science fiction to it. When I was a kid, I came home from school every day, plop myself in front of the TV, put it on PBS to watch the Tom Baker Doctor Who series. And was so upset when they stopped running them because they'd moved on to another doctor. And I was like, well, who's this asshole? I was like, oh, this guy sucks. I'm leaving. I stopped watching it. The Tom Baker episodes are some really good ones in there. I think my favorite is Seeds of Doom, which apparently you can't really even find out there. I had to go to YouTube to find a cut of it because apparently the footage was actually lost in some fire that happened at the BBC eons ago.
They found it.
Yeah, somebody actually had it, a video cassette or a Betamax or something that recorded it from the TV, did their best to remaster it, and then uploaded it.
I think if that's the one I'm thinking of, is that the one where they had to do some parts of it in animated because they didn't have all of the footage?
I can't remember if that one did that. It had claymation, I know that much.
If that's the one, they found a clean copy of the existing master, and the Doctor is coming back to film the parts that were in claymation. That was in the news a month or so ago.
Huh.
So you may get to see Tom Baker again.
He's too goddamn old for that shit.
He's pretty old looking. I grant you that. But he's the Doctor. He's the Time Lord. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
That's right. Seeds of Doom was interesting to me because it was about a biological entity that the Doctor knew about that basically ended up on Earth, and it starts wreaking havoc. And it kind of was, if in a way, it's a predecessor to a lot of modern horror, a lot of modern sci-fi horror, if you think about it. It's very little different between that and having alien running around on Earth. Very, very little difference in a lot of ways. Except this thing's massive and would basically do what the Black is trying to do, which is, just take over the world. Eat everything.
Tom Baker is returning to finish a shelved Doctor Who episode penned by Douglas Adams.
Oh, okay. A shelved one.
So It's not the same thing. No. So I was mistaken in what I said, but there you go. You get to see the Fourth Doctor again.
That's crazy. See, I don't even know what Doctor he is. You know that shit. Of course, you probably
it said. I just looked it on the web, so that's how I know.
Anyway, I thought Seeds of Doom covered that really well. Now, the Doctor's bullshit is obviously, fantastical. The whole concept of a Time Lord, the concept of the TARDIS, all those things are very fantastical. They have absolutely no basis in science. And I'm going to get hate mail for saying that.
What?
I'm going to get hate mail. So much hate mail. I'm cool with it. Go ahead.
They're judging you right now.
Bring it on, bitches. but
Exterminate.
exterminate. But it does have these science fiction trappings and tropes everywhere. The sonic screwdriver, the some of the stuff the TARDIS does with relativistic changes between time and space. They're basically not making a mockery of, but they're using all the scientific stuff that's out there in theories and then busting them wide open. You know, what if kind of stuff. But it all comes from, all right, what if there's a race that can travel through time? And then on top of that, what if they're coming in contact with all these other races like the Daleks, the Cybermen, and which is one of the dumbest names for dumbest freaking cheesiest ass name for a race I've ever heard of in my life. It's pretty bad. It has all of those trappings with it. They often go to worlds that are in different universes or, you know, across the galaxy that have dystopian trappings with them that aren't traditional fantasy stuff. So Doctor Who is right on the border of science fantasy for me. And that doesn't make it bad or good. It just means that that's kind of where I place it.
Those terms in my mind are marketing. They don't really matter for anything other than shelving.
And you know what? And we've discussed this over and over again. Is the same bullshit as horror. The name that you give it is how we're trying to attract as writers, as marketers, as booksellers. We are trying to attract a crowd that we think would enjoy this. Who would enjoy this the most? Mm-hmm. Would it be people who classify themselves as science fiction readers? Would it be people who classify themselves as fantasy readers? Would it be people who classify themselves as mystery or thriller readers? Which audience is most likely to grab onto this?
Horror versus psychological suspense.
Oh boy, there's a can of worms.
I'm not just saying that's one of those flip of the coin things right there. Is, are you trying to attract somebody that identifies as a horror reader, or attract them with the same exact story but label it as psychological suspense instead?
Right. If I want Terry to read my book, it's got to be psychological suspense.
You're damn right.
Tag on it, he's going to see Jason running around with a chainsaw, and he's not going to read it.
And that's also that's something spawned by my age.
Exactly.
And what was horror on the show?
Yeah, and it is the socialization thing. It really is. So rather than asking what makes a good science fiction story, cut to the chase, like Terry said, strip it down, lay it bare. What makes a good story? The trappings around it, I don't think are really going to matter. The bottom line is, I have people who are hard science fiction readers who berate me about what I've done in Derelict and what I've done in The Black. I have hard sci-fi readers who give me accolades for what I've done in The Black and Derelict, and for the same reasons, which is what's really scary. So it just all depends. You're never going to make, anybody happy, but I don't think that's something really to worry about. I think it is marketing to a certain degree, but if you've got a lot of technological stuff in your book, I wouldn't classify as fantasy, because a lot of fantasy readers are going to see that and they're expecting a person to be carrying a sword and armor and everything else. And here you've got these damn Marines on the cover of it. It's just not going to quite work.
So exactly where do you advertise your book as science fantasy?
I don't think you do. I think you have to, I think you basically have to pick one of the buckets.
Well, what I'm saying here is that the only place that you say, like, pick mine, for example. When I load the books up to Amazon, I label them as military science fiction and space opera, because those two subgenres of science fiction most closely represent the audience that I'm writing towards.
Correct.
And none of the readers see that. The cover is the only thing that says what kind of book it is.
Yes.
When somebody is looking at it, it's not like I go out there and go, the greatest space opera ever written, military science fiction, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't. I don't say any of that, because it's marketing. Yeah. And it's not like there's a physical shelf you're putting it on in Amazon that says this is military science fiction or space opera, other than the bestseller lists. And that's something that's beyond your control. I say don't worry about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't worry about it too much either. For Garrus Inferno, we decided to go with a paranormal fantasy route. for the marketing stuff. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be paranormal and urban fantasy. Those are the markers to it, really.
Those are
And
good
maybe,
markers.
and of course, don't send me hate mail, folks. It's just the way it is. Go look at the freaking bookshelves. One of the main characters, the main character, is female. So what do we have to follow the typical urban fantasy deal? We've got a female on the cover.
Is there a tramp stamp?
No, there
You
is
have
not.
failed.
She is scarred though. But the because I'm trying to draw those folks into this book, because that's the audience that is most likely going to gravitate toward this kind of book. And if it works, if the marketing works, then great. Then I can basically say, oh, this is a money maker. I better pop out another one of these puppies. Because there are tons of them I want to write. There are tons of them I want to write. It's just a matter of figuring out, and I will write them. It's just a matter of figuring out what the priorities are. So the marketing aspect is where these buckets go. We've said that on this show before, and we're probably going to say it 1,000 times before this show stops, sometime in 2075, because it just doesn't freaking matter.
Write the story, then figure out where you're going to shelve it.
Yeah, I don't don't even worry about it. It is an interesting question to say what makes a good sci-fi story, but the bigger question that Terry and I both thought of is, well, what makes a good story? The science fiction stuff is just trapped around it. You can write a book like Foucault's Pendulum, who 5 people understood, but everybody bought. And it's because it's so crazy, the mathematics and everything else that goes on with it. You're going to bore the shit out of the average reader. They're not going to appreciate what the writer did. And that doesn't mean that it shouldn't have been written. It's just, this is the bottom line. If that author in particular hadn't been the guy who wrote it, nobody would have read it, because it is a mess. It is a hot mess. It's books like that put this certain strain on your audience. And so you can write a book like that if you're, selling a bazillion of your other books and get away with it, and people will give it a try, which is great. Then you can do some of your more experimental stuff that way. But
so basically your answer is bah humbug.
Bah humbug to which part?
Science fiction, science fantasy, bah humbug. Or is it more like a pox on both of your houses?
It's just not even that. We're going to have these discussions about Arthur C. Clarke on Friday. And we may get into the 2001, 2010, 2061, whatever, was discussion about that, about when it goes into mysticism, when it leaves science behind completely.
Just remember, you've only got 20 minutes here, sport.
I know. That's not much time. So, but it's still science fiction. There is nobody I can think of that is not going to call Arthur C. Clarke a science fiction writer. There are people who are going to call Ray Bradbury a science fiction writer, even though he delved into fantasy quite a bit. But he's always going to be known as a science fiction writer because what are the books that everybody knows him by? Fahrenheit 451 and The Martian Chronicles. Those are the 2 big ones. So
look at Heinlein. He wrote Stranger in a Strange Land. He was well known for science fiction, and there you've got that, which is definitely kind of edging into the mystical.
Yeah, and so it just but Heinlein wrote so much science fiction that he's still known as a science fiction writer.
If you build a big enough library of your own work in one genre, you can stray outside of it and not lose your identity.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Terry and I have kind of gone down 2 different paths. I'm kind of all over the place. He's a little more on the straight and narrow, a little more.
Only a little bit more.
Well, Humanity Unlimited, it's opera.
Yeah. There's a little bit more mustache twirling for the villains, but sure.
Yes. It's. But it just kind of fits in a different realm. I mean, I've written historical, I've written traditional, quote unquote, traditional horror. I've written the sci-fi stuff, and now going all this crazy stuff. And now I guess Derelict is going to be a freaking space opera of sorts. So there is no one path. But the thing is, when I write another Derelict book, all the folks that love the Black and love Derelict are going to read that. And it may drag in some people who love my Garaga stuff. It may drag in some people who love Gare's Inferno or Closetries. But when I release Gare's Inferno, how many of the Derelict and the Black folk are going to, read that book? I don't know.
The more books you have, the more likely your readers are to sample your other series that may not be exactly like what drew them in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
I've got a post-apocalyptic novel that I'm no doubt going to keep writing in. Definitely not science fiction. I've got a fantasy novel, an urban fantasy novel that I'd like to write. So yeah, I'm eventually going to be kind of all over the damn place. But I bet you I still get labeled as a science fiction author.
And I think you will, because your most popular series will probably always be Empire of Bones. Unless you come up with something even more devious that you can keep going on for forever. But that's going to spawn, and you've already talked about, you've got the Imperial Marines stuff that's going to break off of that. You've got all these side books that are coming off of it. So
time for all the things I want to do.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation about how Dave Robeson ripped me a new one in Nashville for not opening up my universes.
I think I know who we can call on to go ahead and have as a guest to talk about that.
Oh, who?
I'm not going to say right now. Let the readers suffer along.
Okay, fine. The hell with you readers. Hell with you listeners. Screw you guys.
Listeners,
Terry and I will just go off and talk by ourselves. Anyway, the book itself, the story that you write, I don't think you need to think about this as science fiction. What is the story? Who are the characters? What are they doing that's interesting? What kind of personal conflicts do they face? What kind of external conflicts do they face? That's the story. All the rest of it's just setting. We've said that before. All the rest of it's just setting and basically maybe laying down some interesting cultural anomalies that seem foreign and strange to us. And by the very, very fact that you're doing that in some cases can get it tagged, as dystopian science fiction or dystopian fantasy or, whatever. So just write the damn story. Just write the damn story. I'm not one of those snobs that sits there and goes, oh, you've got science fiction in my fantasy, or vice versa. It's just make an interesting, make an interesting story with interesting characters, and I'll read it.
Yep. Well, I think that we actually made a good shot at trying to figure out what a very amorphous subject science fantasy is.
And it's just science fiction and fantasy in general. It just the two collide more often than not. I mean, Jurassic Park, as hard sci-fi as it is still has all these fantastical elements, because while it's based on scientific theory, the application is way beyond us at this point. And some of the things that we're talking about have, been disproven, or basically saying, yeah, that's not how that works at all. But back when Crichton wrote it, it was considered, very interesting alarm bell, because he was looking at Dolly the sheep and everything else. So these are all these little things that you have to look at. And when I'm saying it's fantastical, how the creatures acted was very fantastical in many, many ways. You could take issue with that or not, but that was my personal opinion. But regardless, there's always going to be this clash and smash when you start talking about sci-fi with folks. So I would say if you get on a panel, I wouldn't get too attached to any one thing in that realm, because you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. I have not gotten myself into trouble like that on a panel, and I'm trying to make sure I never do. Yet. Shut up.
Well, folks, if you want to school us on what you think science fantasy is, science fiction is, send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can tell Paul exactly how wrong he is on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. You can find us on on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. You can find us on Patreon for however long Patreon may exist. Patreon.com/DRS podcast. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast. And of course, we have to mention the good folks at podhoster.com who host all the episodes of the audio madness for your, well, torment, maybe?
Torment. For your ear holes.
For your ear holes. And now we get to see what new torment the patrons have for you, Paul.
So in case you're new to the show and don't know, our $10 patrons get their names shouted out every week. So go to patreon.com/DRS podcast. As he said, take a look at the rewards. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content and berate us in private. However, now it's time to rattle off these names. So our $10 patrons at this time: Melissa Camaro. I'm sure I just slaughtered your name. My apologies. She's a new $10. Thank you. Ben Dover. Really?
You think that's a real name? You think that's real?
That's a new one too. Nathan, I am slowly going crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 switch petty. I still don't know what that's referring to, dude. You're gonna have to explain that to me. I'm too stupid. Drew Snow to Hell Bernardi. Gee, I wonder where you live. John, nobody likes a clown at midnight. Kill Gallon. Chris, still waiting for DS Swag Winder. Hint, hint. Isabel, I might have changed my name too late, Cushy. Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, and J.R. Hanley.
Thank you, folks, for supporting us. We really do appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
And folks, and with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.